Oh yeah, that
Oh
Twitter
yeah,
thing.
sweeping
I
the
forget
country.
about Twitter. I forget about Twitter for somebody who's on it probably 2 hours a day.
You are on it a lot. You love those Uber
I'm on
facts.
Twitter a lot. Do what?
You love those Uber facts.
It's to me, it's always like a good source of like humor. I mean, the Uber facts themselves aren't hilarious, but I see an Uber fact and immediately a joke comes to mind. Obviously, many times the joke fails, but it's funny to me. So
Yeah, that's all that matters.
now broadcasting live like Brent Musburger on
You're looking live and legion.
the talking.
You remember when Kevin Nealon used to do his Brent Musburger impersonation, and he'd do like he'd do his eye, he'd like sort of make his eyes look kind of funky by putting his fingers on his temples. You remember that?
I vaguely recall it. I mean, I vaguely do.
You need to YouTube that. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey again, everybody, and welcome into Talking Tuscaloosa. Luke Robinson, along with Jimmy Stein, as always. Jimmy, how are you today?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's kind of weird, we literally. I mean, I know I do. I count down the days until practice starts. I mean, I count down because I can't wait to read about practice and read about what's happening every day and hearing things from people that are watching practice or whatever. And I can't wait for that. And then, of course, what we're going to end up talking about half of the show about, I'm sure, is the Jalen thing on Saturday. And now I get a little frustrated because I'm like, I know this is the most interesting thing going on, and it's got every college football fan in America talking about it. But gosh, I would so much rather just be talking about the depth chart and how things might be a little different than we assumed, and the freshman DBs, and just, I mean, because we're going to get into it any minute, but I'm more concerned about the lineup and the depth chart. That's what my main focus and what I'm like talking about the most. And the fact what Jalen said Saturday has changed nothing. I mean, Tua is going to be the quarterback. He's still going to be the quarterback. Now Jalen or whoever is the number 2 quarterback is going to play, quite a bit, I'm sure. But Tua is going to be the quarterback, and nothing Jalen did or didn't say changed things Saturday. It's just created this firestorm of stuff for us to talk about. But it didn't change who we're going to see on the field against Louisville. That's going to be mostly Tua, and me and you have said that repeatedly since January 9th.
Yeah, that's true. I got mixed emotions about this, and we live in a world where you either have to be totally on board with something somebody says, or you have to be incredibly pissed off by something somebody says. But I'm a little more on the fence. I'm leaning towards more pissed off than I am on board. But I'm fine with Jalen Hurts expressing his opinion. I think that's fine. Good for him. And I think he did actually have some points. The problem is those points are going to get lost in the fact that he's bringing this up now, ironically, at Fan Day, when we're supposed to be celebrating all the players.
Right.
That's what was really funky about all this. And, I don't blame his being a little frustrated. If the coaches weren't completely forthright with him?
Forthright's a good word. Okay. Forthright's good.
Then he has a chance. He has a right to be a little PO'd about that, I suppose. But there are ways to handle this, and the way he handled it paints everybody into a corner. He paints himself into a corner, frankly. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a problem. I think that a problem in the sense that it's going to be talked about in the media and probably talked about all year long. But it doesn't have to be completely divisive. And I think the other thing, if I hadn't been to a practice before the Sugar Bowl and I had not seen Tua completely outthrow Jalen in practice, I would probably be more on his side. But I went to practice, like I said, and it was just one practice and all that shit. But I went to practice and I saw that Tua is that much better than he is as a passing quarterback. Now, as a runner, Jalen obviously is very gifted, and we know all this crap, but we need a passing attack. Once we played some defensive lines that are pretty formidable. Do you say formidable or formidable? I say formidable.
I say formidable. You say formidable?
Yeah, you sound like an uppity jackass when you say formidable. I'm just letting you know.
I probably do. I mean, that's what all the uppity jackasses do is they pronounce all these words correctly.
Okay, well, listen. Think about
is it formidable? Formidable.
I say formidable, but
I bet you can say it. I bet the correct way to say it is both. I mean, I'm sure it's one of those.
You can say tomato, or you can be a jackass and say tomato. Either way.
Who says tomato? I mean, I know you can say. Who says that? When people say tomato, who the hell says tomato?
I bet Meghan Markle says it now.
She might have to. They have a lot of weird rules.
They have tomatoes over there. I think they only have beef and Yorkshire pudding. But anyway,
tomatoes are probably like the most tasty thing they have in the entire country, from what I hear.
Far and away. So, oh shoot. Oh, okay. Think about this for a second. The best defensive lines we played in the last 2 years with Jalen Hurts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say Clemson twice. Both their defensive lines were awesome. Auburn,
no doubt.
Georgia, and probably Mississippi State. We had to come from behind to beat Mississippi State because we couldn't really pass the ball. Auburn beat us because we couldn't pass the ball. Clemson beat us once. Now, that wasn't necessarily Jalen's fault, but the point remains. And then the next year when we beat Clemson, or I say last year when we beat Clemson, two defensive players actually scored. Now, one of them was a pass from Jalen, but still two defensive players scored. And given the performance by our defense, we should have beaten them 45-6. And then the next best defensive line we played was probably Georgia's last year, and Jalen didn't score a point against them. So my point is, everybody started to figure out, stop him from running, and you're going to stop Alabama. Against Georgia, the game's on ESPN Classic right now because it's on about every 15 minutes. And I had it on, and they talked about in the first half, Alabama had like 88 yards at one point deep in the second, and 42 of them came on a run by Jalen. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have somebody that can open it up a little more, and Tua's going to be that guy. And I love Jalen Hurts, and I appreciate Jalen Hurts. Thank you for all you've done. I do really mean that. At the same time, I'm going to pull for him wherever he goes. If he goes to Texas, unless he goes to Auburn, I'm going to pull for that kid. So I'm pulling for him to do well. If he goes to Texas or Florida Atlantic or whatever he wants to do, and I think that is inevitable. But Tua's a better quarterback. Bottom line.
Oh yeah, and I've agreed with that 100%. No doubt. I mean, Tua is the best player should play, and I think from what I've seen with my own eyes, and not just the second half of Georgia, but I think Tua is the better player, and he proved in the Georgia game that he's ready. He's obviously ready. So it should be Tua's job, and if Jalen sticks around and if he's playing, I'm sure there's a role for him. But you know what? Where I get a little frustrated, and it's not defending Jalen so much. It's just a statement of fact that we have a lot of fans that treat this quarterback competition like, well, it's like 2016 when it was Jalen versus Blake Barnett and Cooper Bateman and David Cornwell, or like when Blake Sims was fighting with Jay Coker, or Philip Sims versus AJ McCarron. This is not even close to any of that, and this is why. And it's so obvious, to me, in terms of accomplishment, and I'm using that word carefully. I'm picking out that word specifically for this reason. In terms of accomplishment, which I'm defining as wins, championships, awards, school records, those are accomplishments. I didn't say talent. I didn't say great or awesome. I said accomplishments. In terms of accomplishments, Jalen Hurts is the most successful, the most accomplished quarterback to ever lose his job in the history of college football. No one else can name another circumstance where a conference player of the year that quarterbacked his team to 2 national championship games, who won a conference championship, who's been a starting quarterback and beaten USC and Florida State and Clemson and Washington and Auburn and LSU twice and Florida. He's won all those games. He's won an SEC title. He's gotten the team the national championship game twice, and he's been an SEC Player of the Year. He's even gotten Heisman votes. I know he didn't qualify to get, but somebody somewhere voted him, third place in the Heisman a couple years ago. I'm saying no quarterback that has accomplished as much as he has ever lost their job ever in the history of college football. Not Alabama. I'm talking about 130 teams. Everybody's been playing for 100 years now. It's never happened. So to treat this like it's just any old quarterback competition is crazy. It's unlike any quarterback competition ever. A second facet to this is we can call it a competition, but me and you and pretty much 95% of our fan base and the coaching staff and the players have known that it's really not that much of a competition because everyone knows Tua is going to be the primary quarterback. It's not a competition in the sense of, it could go either way. No, it was never going either way. Tua's the better player. Tua's going to be the quarterback, the primary quarterback. So those two things to me are huge points when people are upset with Jalen. I don't think that they're really seeing how frustrating it has to be as accomplished. I didn't say as good or as talented or he's going to the NFL and he's going to be a first round pick. I didn't say any of that. I mean, accomplishments that Jalen has garnered in his 2 years at Alabama, for him to lose his job has never happened in the history of college football. So is Jalen frustrated? He would have to be. Any human being would in his situation. So I give Jalen a lot of rope myself personally to be as frustrated as he cares to be. I'm sure it is extremely frustrating, but Nick Saban is not there to coach just Jalen Hurts. He's responsible for the whole football team, and his job is to put the best football team on the field as possible. That probably means that Tua has to be the quarterback, and I'm sure that frustrates the heck out of Jalen Hurts, who up until this Saturday has been a complete class act. Up until Saturday, I agree, it was a bad day for Jalen. It was a bad look. It was an unwise thing to do, what he did. But he's frustrated, and we should all get that. And one other thing, I tweeted this the other day. It's not. We live in such a strange black or white world when the fact of the matter is everything is gray and we choose to make everything black and white. But, you can do these two things. You can be sympathetic for Jalen's situation and want the best player on the field. You can do both of those things. It's not like if you want Tua on the field, you have to detest the hell out of Jalen Hurts. That's stupid. You don't. You can root for both kids while at the same time preferring that Tua be the quarterback because he's the better player. That's okay. But for some reason, we have fans, if you want to call them that feel it so necessary that Tua be announced the starter today that they have to denigrate Jalen to do it. And I'm sure that has led to a ton of frustration because the amount of negative comments about Jalen Hurts over the past 8 or 9 months on various Alabama boards and social media sites is disgusting. And I'm sure that added up as well. It's impossible for him to avoid. I'm sure he's seen and read a lot of it, and it's very hurtful. So for all those reasons, I think his frustration just boiled over.
It did. And again, young man, got several mics in front of his face, but he has also handled himself in the media so much better than this before. Look, in the end, this too shall pass. This isn't an Urban Meyer situation, although Urban Meyer probably wrote Jalen Hurts a thank you note to at least take a little bit of the spotlight off of him. We'll talk about Urban Meyer in a second, but I just noticed a practice report that came out today about today's practice, and Dylan Moses once again went to the locker room with cramps. I mean, this is something that's happened to him the last couple of practices, hasn't it? I mean, I don't know much. I've only gotten one cramp in my life, knock on wood, and it hurt like hell. But is that something? I mean, is this something that could be a chronic thing with him, or is it just hot as Jesus out there?
Well, I think it's hot, and it's very easy to happen, and we routinely keep IVs available to get fluids in kids intravenously because they can dehydrate and that's what causes cramping. I'm going to assume for now that this is fairly normal, and we're hearing about it with exclamation points behind it simply because it's a starting linebacker, and we're going to be super sensitive about that. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that multiple players cramped up, and not just Dylan. But one thing that's kind of weird, though, to me, Luke, that's a little alarming is the media is only there for the first 15 minutes of practice, right? So Dylan cramped out just 2 periods in. That seems a little odd, but I'm not going to worry about it yet. But gosh, we'll cover this. We've said it 100 times before, but we need to cover it again because it is so important. But I'm not sure, Luke, there's a bigger factor in terms of our ability to win a championship this year. The number one factor is Mack Wilson and Dylan Moses remaining healthy. I don't think there's a bigger factor than that. So it is a little alarming or scary, but thank goodness cramps and not, torn ACL.
Yeah. And look, we can't afford to get any more damn linebackers hurt. And here's the other thing I know.
Anything else in that practice report? You're looking at this practice report and I haven't seen one yet because I've been staring at this Talking Tuscaloosa screen. But what else does it say in this practice report?
Well, this is all from 24/7 Bama Online, and it's something else. It said that, man, this isn't exactly warming the cockles of my heart. It isn't exactly warming the heart of my cockles either. Ben Davis has been moved from inside to outside, and Chris Allen moved from outside to inside, which tells me, I think that speaks more about Ben Davis than it does about Chris Allen. In a bad way. Agreed?
Well, one thing a couple of things alarm me about this. Well, Chris Allen, it seemed to me he was going to be our number 3. Basically, Chris Allen just switched in my mind from our number 3 outside linebacker to our number 3 inside linebacker. Don't you agree? Isn't that just what happened? I mean, he was our 3rd best outside linebacker. Now he's our 3rd best inside linebacker. I assume they moved Ben Davis simply to even out the numbers. One outside guy inside, one inside guy. I don't know, but I know this. I have not heard or seen one fact or opinion from anyone that would know that leads me to believe Ben was going to be a significant player this fall. If it would take an all of the sudden late career blossoming for that to happen, but as of today,
shock you? Doesn't it? I mean,
a little bit.
I saw him at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game in person. He's big as a house. He had a pick 6 in that game. He looked incredibly athletic. He did not look overwhelmed, considering he came from Gordo, which lower classification school. Man, I can't believe the light hadn't come on. I would say, of the players that played their entire career, I wonder if right now he's the most mysterious to me as to why he hadn't contributed. You could throw out Tyler Love, who was, the most famous of all the 5-stars who didn't cut it at Alabama. But, you could sort of see Tyler Love's, you could kind of predict that. It's a little harder to predict offensive line success. But Ben Davis had all the intangibles and all the tangibles, and he's got the lineage. He has everything. And so the fact that the light hadn't come on is a bit shocking to me.
Yeah, I agree that of all the 5-stars that haven't panned out, that one might be the biggest head scratcher of all. But at the same time, I get frustrated a little bit with some fans who love to bring up Ben Davis to me all the time. And I mean, that's a common question, I guess. What's wrong with Ben Davis, as if there is something wrong with him? It's just, I guess it's harder for people to accept when they have 5 stars by their name. At some point, it's harder for people to accept this, but not every kid is a great college football player. It doesn't matter if you were extremely highly recruited or highly rated or lowly recruited and lowly rated. Not every kid is a college football star, and Ben Davis is just not one. As to why he's not, I mean, it's harder to explain than it would be why me or you aren't college football stars. It's harder to explain why Ben isn't, but he's just not. He's just not a good player at that level. I mean, he's just not. Now, he's big enough, he's fast enough, he's quick enough, he's probably strong enough.
And doggone it, people like him.
And people apparently like him, and he checks a lot of boxes except good player. I don't know. Well, baseball is so skill specific, and I guess that's the answer, but football fans have a very difficult time explaining to each other why highly rated players don't work out. Whereas in baseball, routinely half of the first round never makes the major leagues. They never make half of the first round, and people don't sit around scratching their heads over that. I guess baseball's so skill specific. I guess that's why we're like, oh shit, it's just hard to damn hit a major league curveball. Yeah, it is. But it's also hard to play on the first team in the SEC. That's hard too. And we shouldn't scratch our heads over. It's just a fact that not everybody's going to be good. Not everybody's going to be good enough. And as to specifically what is Ben's shortcoming, I don't really know. But I'll say this, and in a general rule, and I'm sure you would agree, you watch as much high school football as anybody, Luke. If the fact that Ben is from a small school, I'm less surprised when kids come from small schools and are bus. I tell you, the programs that rarely produce bus are highly productive kids from 7A type programs. I think very rarely do you see a quote bust from Hoover, from Prattville, from Daphne, from the big successful programs, because to so much extent, those kids are already proven playing against other college level athletes, because most every kid that starts at Hoover or Prattville, I mean, you're playing against kids every week that are also going to be college football players. Ben didn't grow up in that kind of environment, and I guess to some extent it might have stunted his development. One other point I'd make about Ben is I talked to somebody the other day whose opinion I trust, and this makes a lot of sense, and it gets back to him being a Gordo. I talked to this guy who's like, I saw Gordo play Bayside Academy, and Bayside's a 3A private school. They've had like one college football player come out of there in 6 years, and he signed with South Carolina. They've had one in like 6 or 7 years of playing. This is a highly unathletic group in terms of sending kids to play college football. And Gordo played them, and I think Gordo won the game, but it was close. But Ben Davis's stats from that game were something like 6 tackles and half a sack. And the fact of the matter is, a 5-star that's as big and strong as he is, he should be a terror on the field against Bayside. He should make 20 tackles, 3 or 4 sacks, 2 or 3 plays that completely control the game. And if he's sort of absent from the stat line against Bayside, that should have been a glaring horn, a bell going off like, whoa, maybe this guy. I remember, gosh, we talked about this. We probably talked about it on Talking Tuscaloosa. When we were recruiting Darren Lake, and we signed Darren Lake, I remember reading, no one had offered him but us. No one had offered Darren Lake but Alabama. And a friend of mine, a recruiting analyst, once we got that surprise commitment from Darren Lake, who had no scholarship offers, he called up a rival high school because he knows the coach there and says, hey, what do you know about this Lake kid that just signed with Alabama? And he's like, I don't even know who you're talking about. And we played Sumter County last year. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so I knew this was a very lightly recruited project. And Darren, by his senior year, was actually a pretty good player for us. By his senior year, it took him the full 4 years to develop. But my point is, I went to Tighter Insider probably, in the days after his commitment, and I saw fans who, most of them don't know, and I'm not about Tighter Insider posters, it's about fans in general that don't really follow recruiting. But I saw a guy on TI compare Darren Lake to Marcel Darius, and I'm like, if Marcel Darius played 3A football out in the country in West Alabama, you would have to bring body bags. I mean, he would destroy kids at 3. Marcel Darius had 20 sacks his senior year playing 7A football. How many would he had in 3A? 40? 5 a game? I mean, I'm telling. And meanwhile, Darren Lake had no sacks. I think his junior year, none. And somebody like, oh, he's Marcel Darius. Like, well, here's a guy that doesn't know too much about recruiting, because those comparisons were nuts. But anyway, I say all that to say Ben Davis played small school country ball, and myself in the future, I think Ben Davis is a good example for, hey, when you got a kid playing 3A football that's big enough and fast enough to play in the SEC, he better be racking up some monster production, or there could be some issues. And I can't tell you off the top of my head what Ben Davis's production was. I'm just using that one game as an example. But you're right, it just hasn't worked out. Why? I don't know. But so Chris Allen is now practicing primarily inside. I can see, though, Chris Allen being in a Rashaan Evans type role, Luke, where I bet what we're going to see is Chris Allen inside on first and second down and outside on third down. And we did that with Dante Hightower. We did that with Jarrell Harris. We did it really with Rashaan Evans to a degree. We did it last year with Dylan Moses. So my guess is Chris Allen is going to play inside a bunch, but when it's third down, we're still very likely to see Chris Allen outside. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're shuffling a lot of stuff around. Obviously, I mean, we're shorthanded back there, but just reading again from 24/7, I want to give them all the credit. During Saturday's open practice, Dylan Moses exited the field early and appeared to be doing cramps. At Monday's practice, he was back in the front line. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. Forget the whole cramp thing. He didn't have cramps today.
Oh, the cramps were Saturday.
I know. I just wanted to scare the shit out of everybody. I mean, I just was glancing this thing, and I was like, damn, he went out with cramps again. And I didn't read the during Saturday's open practice shit.
Okay.
So anyway, so sorry about the whole saying you had cramps, Dylan. So let's see. There's nothing different in the quarterback line. Jalen Hurts was first up, followed by Tua, and then Mack and Kyle Edwards, Lane Hatcher, and Braxton Barger. At this point, I think we can all go, all right, come on now, Nick. Come on now. You can go ahead and put Tua number one in the line, right?
It so doesn't matter. I guess there's a line of thinking out there that's like, hey, if Tua's going to be the starter, then Tua needs most of these reps. He needs more reps to get him game ready. But one thing I will say about that is Tua came off the bench cold and won a national championship.
Yep.
The stage doesn't get bigger. The competition doesn't get any better. And he came off the bench. So I don't think Tua is a guy that needs a high volume of reps to be ready to play well. So I put zero credence in that, specifically because we've seen it with our own eyes, that he's a guy that just doesn't need these high volume of reps. He's already proven it. So, but I mean, and who knows who's going to take the first, there is so much focus on who's going to take the first snap against Louisville. Did it matter that Blake Barnett took the first snap against USC in 2016? No, it did not. So, Philip Sims played quite a bit early in 2011 before AJ. So when I say Tua is going to be the quarterback, I'm not necessarily saying he's going to take the first snap against Louisville. What I'm saying is when we add up all the snaps taken by quarterbacks at Alabama in 2018, I am extremely comfortable in predicting Tua takes most of them. And that's what I'm comfortable with. And I can't sit here and swear to you these will be the starter versus Louisville. I don't think it matters. I think what matters is who's going to take most of the snaps at quarterback in 2018. I'm 100% convinced that the answer to that is Tua.
No, I agree. But yeah, so he, the maybe this is also Saban trying his best to appease Hurts or something. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. You're right. It really doesn't matter, but it's still kind of funny that that's the way it is. Taking a break from regular football talk for a second, I want to throw something out there. We hadn't done this podcast in a couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to a wedding party for one of my wife's employees, and she's younger, 23, 24, 25, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she's getting married to a dude about the same age, really cool guy. And there were a bunch of guys, they're younger guys. They all said they listened to us. So I was just, I was shocked and surprised and tearful and appreciative. And I hugged them all, told them, if you wouldn't mind helping me sign this letter that I've written to Pringles. We hadn't mentioned Pringles in a while. Pringles,
No
the potato chip you love so much you could just shit.
Yeah.
How about that? Is that good? What was it? What was that
shit right here?
movie?
Shit right here in this in this tube.
Yeah, yeah. Pringles, finish off the chips, then shit in the tube. I mean,
and mail it to an Alb.
Yeah, I can see that being an okay tagline.
Heck yeah.
Mail it to an Alb. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'm not exactly sure how you're going to shit in that tube. That wouldn't be a comfortable seat. I mean, I guess you'd have to kind of hover and aim or something. I'm just saying it's going to be difficult to pull it off.
You ever seen Two Girls in a Cup? It's the worst video. Look, I've seen a lot of, like, one thing people love to do on Facebook right now is post videos of doctors popping these huge zits, and it's awful. I mean, it's just awful. I don't know why people keep posting this, but I would watch those 100 times over while eating dinner than watch Two Girls in a Cup again.
Yeah, Two Girls in a Cup is kind of gross. Even Quentin Tarantino thinks that's over the top.
I mean, or I think it was Two Girls in One Cup is what it was. I mean, it's just awful.
A guy had not seen it at my fantasy football draft. I've been in the same fantasy football group for like 15 years, and we have the draft I think usually on Tuesday, the day after Labor Day, so 2 days before NFL kicks off. And a few years ago, a guy somehow came up, and a guy had never seen it, so we pulled it up on a laptop. I got to see a guy who's never seen it. So that's why I laugh, because
you should have videoed his reaction to it.
Oh my gosh, he just about threw up. That was hilarious. It was a lot funnier than the stupid video. His reaction.
Oh gosh, it's just so damn horrible. So going back to. Let's go back and talk about the.
We probably shouldn't talk about it anymore. We'll lose our Pringles sponsorship.
Yeah. What was that shit that speaking of shit, that potato chips were made with for a while? Was it Olean? That it literally gave you horrible diarrhea, and they were like, "Yeah, now these won't make you as fat." I'm like, "Yes, because you immediately crap out everything you had."
That's science.
Yeah, that is good science.
That's good science.
So let's talk about Urban Meyer for a second. First of all, my first thought in all of this was, if there was an assistant coach whose wife got Nick Saban in this kind of trouble, I would be very fearful for everybody's safety involved. Because this woman, Christy Smith, is already fearful for her safety, and we had a guy poison an iconic tree because somebody put a mini Cam Newton jersey on Bear Bryant statue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So secondly, again, I'm not pro Urban Meyer. I don't like the guy. I know he lied at media days. I do kind of get the sense that it's not his responsibility. I get that sense a little bit. But I also understand where people say it doesn't look like he followed protocol. In the end, either Urban Meyer kept a known domestic violence abuser, is that what you'd say, on his staff, or he didn't follow protocol. And I guess the main question is either one of those a fireable offense? I would say the first one is a more fireable offense than the second one. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree. I think they're both fireable. I just don't know, because it's Urban Meyer, that he will be fired. I think if this had happened to there's 130 Division I, I think 120 Division I coaches would have already been fired, and there's about 10, including Nick, that would not be given every benefit of the doubt. But it's just very difficult to fire about 10 guys, and Urban's one of them. In 2018, I don't know. I'm still almost predicting he won't be fired, which is what my feeling was the day that it came out. Maybe he should be. I think 120 coaches would be. I think it's unacceptable. In either scenario that you laid out, Luke, where that he either knowingly kept a violent guy on his staff, or he didn't follow protocol. And I think both of those things should probably result in a firing. But it's a global thing. You have to take everything into account. I mean, everyone's probably entitled to a bad decision or two. No one's perfect, but still, that's just
well, and okay,
it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine.
No, I agree with you about the bad decision, Jimmy. But here's the other thing: is that it would be different if you just heard this rumor about a guy that you're not just you're one of your coaches, he's one of your friends apparently, and you have some ties in the Earl Bruce thing and whatever. So maybe if this were a one-time thing and there were just a bunch of hearsay, you'd go, hey, look, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, I kind of get that. But, like, there was a pattern there. So, again, this is such a sticky wicket. I feel like in the end it's going to be, well, I should say this. Friday, I felt it was impossible for him to remain the coach. Today, I would say it's 50-50.
Yeah, he could easily be fired. I mean, my immediate gut was that he wouldn't be fired. That the lying, I think in the old days, just lying at media days like he did, that would have gotten you fired 10 years ago. I guess it doesn't.
See, I think it's the other way around. I think that, I mean, I don't think lying at media day. The line at media days doesn't really bother me. Everybody,
it's not just lying. It's that lie. That's a big one. That's a big one. That's not me and Jalen met and discussed his transfer issue back in May, and it's not true. That's a lie, but that's just football. Yeah. This is big. Were you aware of a 2015 incident involving your wide receiver coach beating his wife? Nope, first I heard of it.
No, okay, you're right.
That's a whopper of a lie. We kind of live in a lying society now. I think what we expect from our head coaches has changed. I think Saban inadvertently is to blame a little bit for that. He was his infamous, I'm not going to be the head coach at Alabama, which was a mistake. And he's admitted it was a mistake. I don't think that was necessarily a lie, because when he said it, he might have meant it. He might have meant it. That's what.
All lies aren't created equal any more than Tyler Love and Julio Jones are both 5 stars.
Exactly. That's a great point. All lies are not created equal, but the lie he told at media days was a whopper.
That's an example of a very good lie.
It is a big one. That was the home run of lies. That cleared the fence.
But I don't know what in the hell is going to happen.
Yeah, whatever.
But man,
Bob Stoops shockingly retired last summer, and Lincoln Riley led Oklahoma all the way to the playoff. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that even if Urban's not the coach, that this is going to negatively affect Ohio State's team. They clearly have a highly competent, very good staff, and they're chock full of great players. I watched a lot of their spring game. It's one of the few times I've watched a spring game where I was like, holy shit, that team looks good to me. I think Ohio State's going to have a good football team, even if they're coached by Courtney Smith.
Wow, that would be something.
Yeah, that's a story.
That's a story.
Hey, I think we won't get too into it. Obviously, I'm a divorce lawyer and I deal with domestic violence issues as part of my job often. I think Courtney Smith is a hero. I know she's getting absolutely destroyed on the Ohio State message boards by asshole fans who blindly support their program and coach no matter what, which is exactly how Penn State became Penn State people.
Right.
I think Courtney Smith is a hero. It took a lot of guts for her to publicly admit what was going on and to bring down Zach and incidentally Urban Meyer. She's, some people call her victim. I don't think that's fair to call her a victim. I think she stood up for herself. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll say this too: the first of all, the statement Urban Meyer put out Friday was just awful, and secondly, the video Zach Smith, where he seemed like a frat boy in front of like their committee about whether or not they should kick him out of the frat. He was like, I don't. It was all defensive stuff. Look, man, maybe Courtney Smith is a look, it got a little crazy sometimes. I believe that, certainly. I mean, we've all heard stories like that. But man, there's no way you're going to have those texts where you're like, yeah, no, I choked you in Mexico or whatever he said. I mean, that dude came off as the most disingenuous jerk.
God. Urban had a chance to fire him in 2009 at Florida.
Yeah.
And if Urban loses his job over this, I have zero sympathy for Urban, I guess you'd say. I mean, he's got this coming if he loses his job. I think it's perfect. But again, if we're betting right now, like you just said, 50-50, I would say I'm more 60-40. He stays with some type of suspension, which is even worse because the suspension means that's Ohio State saying, yeah, you did wrong here.
Yeah,
because they're suspending him, right? So that obviously means he did something wrong, but not to the level of firing you. So we're just a little upset that you kept this from us or didn't fire your coach that was beating on his woman. That's just I will be upset if there's a suspension. I say he's either exonerated because there's no evidence he did something terrible, or he's fired.
No, I'm with you on that. You can't suspend him here and say, okay, this is a slap on the wrist, because this is not a slap on the wrist offense. This is a real live, either you did or you didn't. This is not a,
that's right.
That would be downright criminal if he.
It's like convicting someone of murder and sentencing them to community service.
Exactly.
Like, no, guilty of murder. That's a long prison sentence or the electric chair. That's not picking up trash on the side of the highway for a month.
Man. All right. Yeah. Well, that pretty much wraps us up. We will be here next week, I suppose. I think.
Heck yeah, I'm excited, and hopefully.
Are you rejuvenated?
Well, definitely. I mean, the Jalen thing got me a little sidetracked and morose. Maybe is the right word. I mean, in the sense that I was so excited to just talk about the depth chart and the new freshmen and Waddle and Anoma and Surtain, and now we got to talk about the quarterbacks for another month. And to me, what's bored me about the quarterback talk is when we woke up on January 9th, Alabama's quarterback in 2018 was going to be Tua Tagovailoa, period.
Right.
And we've talked about it to death for 8 months when it's had an inevitable ending. And now, gosh, I posted a while ago on Crimson Country Club, the website we both post on. And I mean, is Jalen the most criticized player in Alabama football history? I think the answer is yes. I'm not just talking about what happened this week. I'm talking about over the last 9 months. I don't think we have ever had a player that has been more criticized by our own fan base than Jalen. And I'm all ears if someone else has a different answer than that. And I think it's outrageous, really, when you think about what all Jalen has accomplished, that he would be the most criticized player in Alabama football history. But I think he is. I'm all ears as to who. If it's not Jalen, then who is it?
Chris Capps. That's who it is.
That's not bad. That's a pretty good. That's not bad. I mean, in terms of like, he definitely took there was a lot of negativity there. But Chris Capps wasn't accomplished like Jalen.
Lee Tiffin also, and Cade Foster, both of them
at times. At times, yeah.
And I'll say, here's the other thing. Jalen hadn't been criticized. Like, while Jalen was just winning all the time, even when we lost the national championship game, everybody said it wasn't his fault. I mean,
I would say starting with that Clemson loss.
Yeah.
I think he wasn't criticized by a lot, but he was criticized by some, a number that has grown and now exponentially grew over this past weekend. Yeah. And a lot of that is Jalen's fault. And in terms of, he brought that attention on himself.
Yeah.
But I just find it odd that of all the players in our history, that's the one we criticize more than any other. So
yeah, but see, the category itself requires that the player be good at some point to be able to be criticized. I mean, we're not going to criticize Skylar DeLong the same way, no matter what the hell he does.
No, or a third team player like Derek Keefe or something. And I know that was rude just to pick his name out, but I mean, Derek hasn't been a significant player to Alabama. I guess we could sit around and talk about, well, Derek Keefe isn't isn't good enough to play for Alabama. I guess that's a criticism, and I guess it's a fair thing to say, but people don't harp on it to death and people will harp on a quarterback. So that's a good point, that you have to be pretty good for people to even discuss you all the time. But that's what I mean too, is that, well, he is pretty good. That's why we're discussing him all the time. If he was truly an awful player, it would never come up. He never would have been the quarterback.
Right.
All right.
One of those catch 22s, or as I like to say, catch 2nd and 26s. Feel free to use that on the road.
You go catch 22. He's fast. That Harris kid.
22 is fast. That's very nice. That's his new nickname.
Catch 22? Yeah.
That could have, you know what, that should have been, I wish Damian Harris had been number 22 his freshman year, because all those times he got caught from behind. Or was that, that would have been funny. Like, you catch 22. Been much better joke if he actually had that jersey number.
There would be so many great jokes if we had different sets of facts all the time.
If we could just change things to fit our joke, to fit our punchlines, man, we'd be kicking ass. I'd be Eddie Murphy up in this batch.
You would be.
All right. Well, we will talk next week, I suppose.
Oh, let's see if we could do a whole show next week and never mention quarterback. Think we could do that?
Oh, let's do that. You know what?
I
wrote an article one time that was nothing but questions, just to see if I could do it. I was able to do it. And
I'm going to ask you a question. Did you do it?
Yeah, I did it.
Okay. How about that?
I did it.
I did it.
So yeah, let's no quarterback talk at all next week. That's how we go.
Talking other positions with Jimmy and Luke.
Talking shit besides quarterbacks.
Talking other positions sounds like a sex show.
Let me say, if you want to make sure that we get no listeners, or if you want to find a way to alienate people, go up to them and say, "Hey, did you catch the podcast Luke and Jimmy did on other positions?" But do you remember the Simpsons? Speaking of Simpsons, do you remember the Simpsons when Apu and his wife were trying to get pregnant? And he couldn't get pregnant, so he was talking to Homer about it, because Homer has 3 kids, and Homer was like, "Man, it's just, so easy." And Homer had him recreate like he was a high school football star and she was a cheerleader and they went to Lookout Point and all that shit. But Apu said, "Man, we've done everything. We've tried all these medical procedures. We've tried all this medicine. We've done every position imaginable." And Homer goes, "On top and on bottom?" That gets me.
That's something. And it's funny, just coming from Homer, it's easy. I never saw that, but it's easy to imagine the look on Homer's face when he says that. That's funny.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's even funnier to me since I came back from India recently, and there's almost all this Kama Sutra shit everywhere.
Oh gosh!
I see why there's 2 billion people over there. Nobody screw it. You got all these traditions. It's great. I don't know. That's not bad. That's not a horrible joke, is it? I mean,
that makes me tired.
Huh?
Makes me tired to think of.
Oh, you know what? I think I did. I think I did. I hope my memory's shot. I think I either looked very hard at a Kama Sutra book at one of the souvenir shops, or I bought it. I'm not sure which one I did. And if I bought it, I need to find that damn thing for my kids find it.
I'm going with bought it. What movie was? I think it's Biloxi Blues, when they were playing cards or something. Somebody asked how many positions are there?
Yeah.
How many sexual positions are there? And Matthew Broderick says, "I know for a fact there's 52. I saw a dirty deck of cards once."
Nicely done. Matthew Broderick always bringing the heat.
He does. He's filthy.
There's nothing screams sexual icon like Matthew Broderick.
He's 68 and he still looks 14, which I think is awesome.
He does look 14.
He could do a Ferris Bueller sequel like he's in college today. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He could.
They ought to do that.
Meanwhile,
they ought to do that.
We can ask Sarah Jessica Parker why the long face.
Yeah. I think it's funny.
I know, it is kind of fun. I'll get rude towards the end. All right. Roll Tide, everybody.
Roll Tide. Next week, no quarterbacks.
No QBs. All right. See you, man.
See you, man. All right, bye.
Bye.